operators are pressing the government to reopen rail bridges in Eagle Pass and El Paso. Border authorities closed them on Monday because they're understaffed. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says shutting down rail traffic through Eagle Pass and El Paso will inflict significant economic harm. Ariane Pastor,
close the border, you morons.
Iowa caucus is just weeks away.
But he certainly supported an insurrection. No question about it.
President Biden, as he left the White House Wednesday,
and that's exactly what they're about. So we need to change this up. The Democrat policies aren't working.
What are you hearing about the flow of illegal immigrants from other countries?
171 countries. I talked to a Border Patrol agent the other day, and he said, we're shocked if anybody comes here from Mexico illegal. That's not where they're coming from.
Where are
they're coming from Africa, all over Asia. A lot of people coming directly from mainland China by the tens of thousands a week. You've seen the video. I'm sure that your viewers have seen the video. It's horrifying. Just lines and lines of men coming in, fighting-age men coming from 171 different nations, many of them nations that sponsor terrorism. Now, we all saw the horrific images out of Israel on October 7th with Hamas, the terrorist organization, slaughtering innocents. We understand how these things work. One call from one of these terror cells in the Middle East to activate terrorists that are already here in America is all it takes to literally kill people, kill Americans. And I'm not willing to allow this to continue happening. So we need to get serious on the border.
Kari Lake, Arizona candidate for United States Senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That is all we have for you this evening on the Capitol Report.
Iowa caucus is just weeks away.
But he certainly supported an insurrection. No question about it.
President Biden, as he left the White House Wednesday,
he was smuggling classified documents in his socks. You know, they're accusing Trump of taking classified documents, and you know, it could fall back on them. It's possible the Democrats don't mind that. Maybe they want Biden off the table. Maybe they want this whole thing done. And of course, if Biden comes back into office, he could technically, or even right now, he could technically pardon any former officials. You know, as the president has the ability to pardon people for crimes. It's also totally possible, though, that, you know, the Supreme Court can make a ruling that's limited specifically on the 14th Amendment, not on executive privilege overall. And if they do that, that's not going to affect the January 6th argument, and that's also not going to, well, actually it might. But especially it's not going to affect, you know, any kind of other crimes that might be included under that. If they make a determination on this, in this example, the two sides of it, again, are 14th Amendment, Section 3, whether that includes executive privilege, and also on whether Trump had executive privilege when he, you know, made his statements on January 6th encouraging people to go protest at the Capitol. Either of these is going to be big. Either of these could have pretty sweeping, you know, impact on the country. I do think
be
the Supreme
peaceful
Court is
and
going to
patriotic.
I do think that they're going to rouse from their slumber and make a big determination. And let's be honest with ourselves, the Supreme Court is, you know, is skewed conservative, although they haven't really necessarily come out to support Trump. Remember, when it came to the election and the arguments, you know, of fraud and so on, the Supreme Court wouldn't even hear it. This would be a pretty big one for them to be forced to rule on. So we'll see what happens. I will say something else, though. This also opens a very interesting door, you know, 14th Amendment, Section 3, to look into what else might have been considered an insurrection. Because if they're arguing that any official who has given aid, comfort, you know, material support to any individual who has committed insurrection, then that official can no longer serve in office ever again for the rest of their life. I'd point to the Chaz site. I'd point to the CHOP site, where Antifa and BLM took over a section of Seattle and then declared it was an autonomous zone. Remember, that's what the acronym Chaz stood for, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And the individuals who created the Chaz site in Seattle declared that they had conquered a part of the United States and that the part that they conquered was now a separate country. That is an actual insurrection, by definition. Now, I will ask, how many elected officials supported, aided, or gave comfort to BLM or Antifa? How many officials were involved in the attempt also, I'd say, to remove Donald J. Trump from office using the fake Trump-Russia story, which we now know is fake, funded both by the Clinton campaign and the Democrat Party. It was opposition research. It was false information. It has now been shown to have been false information. How many officials used false information to try to remove the President of the United States from office? That was an insurrection. Now, I should note as well, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a legal challenge against every single one of those officials on these same legal grounds? Because guess what? That would include Joe Biden. That would include Hillary Clinton. That would include Barack Obama, who was president at the time. That would include most of the intelligence services. That would include many of the local government officials. That would include most of the Democrat Party, I would argue. It would remove all of them from office and make them ineligible to hold office ever again. And that's in addition to possible criminal charges based on that, if you wanted to go that route. But on the 14th Amendment case, well, folks, this is going to be big. I will say also that by removing the leading candidate of the opposition party from the ballot, by making it so that Americans cannot choose who is their leader, by making it so that Americans cannot elect the President of the United States, this represents the most serious assault on democracy that America has ever seen. Now, America is a republic. We're a constitutional republic. What is a republic? Well, it's representative democracy. That's what, republic's defined as. It's where we elect the people who represent us in the democratic process. We have
Instead of
Congress,
installing
the
them.
President of the United States. If that process is thrown out, if the ability for Americans to choose who their leader is removed from them, if Americans are denied the ability to cast their votes and choose who will be the President of the United States, this means that the republic has come to an end. This means that that democratic process is being denied to Americans. And I will say on a couple sides what that means. On one side, that means that, well, you could argue that this is an assault on the Constitution. The Constitution lays out the form of government we have. The Constitution lays out the process through which we choose our leaders. The Constitution lays out the process by which our country functions. If you remove the ability of people to elect the President of the United States, you have destroyed that. And that's serious given the fact that every law enforcement officer, every member of our military, every elected official has sworn an oath to protect the Constitution from enemies both foreign and domestic. If this does represent an assault on the Constitution, it means basically that, first of all, our system of government has come to an end. And second of all, it means that every single person who has done this has made themselves an enemy of the Constitution domestically. That's very serious. And in addition to this as well, I would say this represents probably the death throes of the Democrat Party. No Republican, no conservative, maybe even not a lot of Democrats. In fact, I've even seen like RFK Jr. and a few other Democrats condemning what's happening right now. If they do this and they win in 2024, nobody is going to recognize that as being a legitimate election. The faith in the election will come to an end. The faith in our system of government will have been destroyed. And if that takes place, whoever comes into office will be seen as a dictator. They'll be seen as the individual who overthrew democracy, who made it so that Americans could not elect their leader, and that seized that from the American voters. I think that this, I really think that the Democrats, they need to come out and condemn this. They could say, hey, that's just the Colorado Supreme Court. This does not represent all of us, because if they don't, they're going to be grouped in based on this perception with that entire thing that is happening right now. They're going to be grouped in and perceived as being part of this coup d'etat to overthrow our election process. Now, as this happens in Colorado as well, the corporate media are coming to terms with the new reality. The criminal charges against President Donald Trump are not going to stop him from having a potential victory in 2024. This should be seen in context of what's happening. They are recognizing now that Donald J. Trump is inevitable unless they can find another avenue to stop him. They're acknowledging that every criminal charge they've rolled out, everything they're doing is not going to be enough to stop Trump. And I know a lot of you have been asking, well, heck, that's not working. What else are they going to do? Because we know they're not going to just, throw their hands up and give up. You know they're going to try something else. Well, maybe this is what it is.
Iowa caucus is just weeks away.
But he certainly supported an insurrection. No question about it.
President Biden, as he left the White House Wednesday,
Constitution's 14th Amendment. Where is the due process here?
Well, this is a completely incorrect reading of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment by 4 partisan left-wing judges on the Colorado Supreme Court. The case law is very clear. If you want to disqualify someone under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment passed after the Civil War to chase out of office Confederate sympathizers who engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, Congress has to pass a federal criminal statute, which Congress did in 1869, related to insurrection or rebellion. You have to bring federal charges approved by a federal grand jury. You have to have a federal jury unanimously find the defendant with evidence beyond a reason. The federal judge, has to convict that defendant, and that conviction has to be upheld on appeal through the federal courts. That is the only way you can disqualify under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. There is a case from Chief Justice Samuel Chase more than 150 years ago that is directly on point. It is controlling, and the Colorado Supreme Court ignored this and railroaded President Trump.
And given the Colorado court's ruling, what are the broader ramifications here?
Well, the Supreme Court needs to decide whether to take this case. It should take this case because this has broader ramifications, as you said, because Trump's not going to win Colorado in the general election. But what's going to happen is you're going to have key swing states try to use this precedent in Colorado to disqualify President Trump in places like Michigan and New Hampshire and Minnesota, maybe Wisconsin, states where Trump is going to win. They know these Democrats, whether they're the judges, whether the prosecutors, whether the lawyers, they know that President Trump is on the path to beating President Biden like a drum on November 5th, 2024, after the Democrats impeached Trump twice for nonsense, indicting him 4 times for non-crimes, illegally gagged him twice, tried to bankrupt his business for non-fraud, and now this is their legal hill to simply take Trump off the ballot because they know the American people want to put Trump in the White House.
Iowa caucus is just weeks away.
But he certainly supported an insurrection. No question about it.
President Biden, as he left the White House Wednesday,
Stays, they're going to make sure that they're not on the ballot completely and convert the system to a caucus. How feasible is that, changing it from a primary to a caucus?
Well, this shouldn't have to happen. And even 3 of the 7 Democrat-appointed justices said that this should not have happened. Three of the Democrat justices filed dissents saying what 4 of their radical Democrat colleagues did was un-American. It's unconstitutional. It violates due process. It's unprecedented. And it uproots the norms. It's actually a danger to democracy that these 4 radicals are pretending to protect.
Mike Davis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, a report finds that the Chinese regime tried to meddle in the 2022 election. Our guest says they'll do it even more in 2024. Hear what else he has to say about China's influence campaigns in the U.S. And many
Iowa caucus is just weeks away.
But he certainly supported an insurrection. No question about it.
President Biden, as he left the White House Wednesday,
stays, they're going to make sure that they're not on the ballot completely and convert the system to a caucus. How feasible is that, changing it from a primary to a caucus?
Well, this shouldn't have to happen. And even 3 of the 7 Democrat-appointed justices said that this should not have happened. Three of the Democrat justices filed dissents saying what 4 of their radical Democrat colleagues did was un-American. It's unconstitutional. It violates due process. It's unprecedented. And it uproots the norms. It's actually a danger to democracy that these 4 radicals are pretending to protect.
Mike Davis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, a report finds that the Chinese regime tried to meddle in the 2022 election. Our guest says they'll do it even more in 2024. Hear what LT has to say about China's influence campaigns in the U.S. And many
Iowa caucuses just weeks away.
Well, he certainly supported an insurrection. No question about it.
President Biden, as he left the White House Wednesday, said
1988. Here's more on that in the latest congressional updates.
House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan is asking the Department of Justice to hand over documents and information about the DOJ's attempt to get personal information about Republican staffers, particularly those involved with conducting oversight of the DOJ's handling of the Steele dossier. For example, Jason Foster, a former chief investigative counsel, said he was one of many who were told just this year that the DOJ had subpoenaed Google for their personal phone records, along with the committee's Herman Werman, alleviate the heightened activities involved, or whether the department first saw the information through a process, and over in the Senate, forming all the nominees under Tommy Tuberville's blockade. The final star generals were approved this week just before sending day. However, another order of business was left unfinished, a deal on Ukraine aid and changing border policy.
No longer any disagreement that the situation at the southern border is unsustainable.
We agree the border must be fixed. That is a broad consensus in our caucus. We must succeed. Democrats, myself, remain totally committed to working with our Republican counterparts to reach an agreement.
Now senators have left D.C. for the holiday recess, punting a possible deal into early next year.
Turning our attention now.
Hey, Christmas time is a time for giving, so we at NTD, and we care about organizations like Compassion International, which helps children, and Salvation Army. On your screen, there are organizations that you can give to for this Christmas season. And realize that when you're touching the life of a child or a family in need, it's more than just a seasonal giving at Christmas, but it's the joy that lasts all year through. You're watching A Joyful Christmas on NTD.
Whatever winter pot, we'll find it all alone in the dark. I don't wanna light a fire unless it will warm your heart. I'm playing no house songs, I need you to sing your part. And baby, if I could just have one wish come true, I don't wanna spend one more Christmas without you.